They say some moments haunt you forever. Not the loud ones, not the dramatic ones. The quiet ones. The ones that sneak up on you when you're folding laundry or staring out the window. The ones that feel small when they happen, but end up changing everything. For me, it started with a knock. Not urgent. Not loud. Just soft. I almost didn't hear it. Almost didn't answer. I wish I hadn't. But I did. And when I opened the door, there he was. Theo, my husband's friend. He smiled like he always does. That easy kind of smile that makes you feel like you matter. And in that moment, I realized how long it had been since someone looked at me like I wasn't just surviving. He said he needed help. Just something small. A quick favor. And I said yes. Of course I said yes. Because I was lonely. Because I was tired. Because when you've been invisible for so long, attention feels like oxygen. I didn't plan for anything to happen. I didn't even think twice. But the truth is, what started that day didn't stay small. It grew. Quietly. Slowly. Inside me. Have you ever been so emotionally starved that the first drop of attention felt like salvation? Because that's what it felt like. Not exciting. Not scandalous. Just alive. He only asked for a favor. But what I did next, it changed everything. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold if you believe the most complicated stories live in the silence between words. I'm 34. Been married 8 years. Mother of 2 boys, 7 and 4. Most days, I don't recognize the woman in the mirror anymore. She looks tired. Not the long day kind of tired, but the kind that settles into your bones. The kind you carry in your shoulders, your voice, your smile. I used to be light. I used to laugh easily. Now, everything feels heavy. Like I'm walking through fog. My husband. He's not a bad man. He works hard. Always has. But somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me. Everything with him is schedules and deadlines. His phone rings more than he speaks to me. And even when he's home, he's not here. His eyes are on a screen, his mind somewhere else. We used to stay up late, talking about dreams. Now we barely talk about dinner. He touches me out of obligation, not desire. Kisses feel like habits. Conversations feel like checklists. I tried. God knows I tried. I planned dates. I dressed up. I left little notes in his briefcase. He forgot our anniversary last year. Said it slipped his mind because of a project launch. I laughed it off. Told him it was okay. But inside, it cracked something. A small fracture where love used to live. That's the thing about loneliness. It doesn't always look like silence. Sometimes it's a full house, with kids laughing in the background, and a heart that hasn't felt held in months. And then there's Theo. He's been around for years. One of those close family friends who shows up at birthdays, barbecues. Always smiling. Always helpful. Carries in the groceries without being asked. Remembers your favorite drink. He's different from my husband. Where my husband is stiff and distracted, Theo is relaxed and present. He listens, not the passive kind. I mean the real kind, where you feel like your words are safe with him. He'd come by now and then. Helped fix the fence once. Sat on the porch with my boys, showing them how to carve pumpkins last fall. I remember watching him that day. How gentle he was. How the boys laughed with him in a way I hadn't heard in a while. He'd make jokes in passing. If I ever settle down, I want a family just like this. And I'd smile, but part of me would ache. Because the family he described? It wasn't the one I was living in, it was the one I was pretending to hold together. Sometimes, Theo would linger after my husband left for a meeting. Not long, just enough to share a cup of coffee, talk about music or books. Nothing crossed a line. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't look forward to it. It felt innocent. Until it didn't. I noticed the way his eyes would stay on me a second too long. The way he'd ask, "You okay?" and actually mean it. The way I started brushing my hair before he came by. I never told anyone this. Not my sister. Not my friends. Because how do you explain craving something you're not supposed to want? The house we live in is quiet. Tidy. Too tidy. Like it's been staged for a life that doesn't really exist. It's early autumn now. The trees outside are starting to turn fiery reds and burnt oranges, but the skies have been mostly gray, and somehow it feels like they match me. Gray. Faded. And even with the boys' laughter in the background, there's this stillness inside me. A silence I've been carrying for years. And then he knocked. That soft knock. And everything started to shift. Theo has always been kind. Too kind, maybe. But I never let myself think about that too much, because if I did, I'd have to admit how badly I wanted to feel that kindness again. How badly I wanted someone, anyone, to see me. And on that day, he did. It was a Tuesday. Late afternoon. The kind of day where the rain taps gently on the windows, not a storm, just enough to make everything feel slow and quiet. The boys were still at school. My husband was in another city for some conference I hadn't even asked about. I was wiping down the kitchen counter when I heard the knock. That same soft knock. And for some reason, I already knew it was him. Theo. He stood there, slightly wet from the rain, laptop bag slung over his shoulder, hair damp at the edges. He gave that half-smile I'd come to recognize somewhere between sorry to bother you and I hoped you'd answer. He said his laptop crashed. He had a big presentation due in 2 days. His files were a mess, and he remembered I once mentioned I used to work in admin and knew my way around PowerPoint. I told him to come in. Told him it was no trouble. It really wasn't. We sat at the dining table. He pulled out his notes, his broken laptop, and started talking through what he needed. I listened. I helped. I wasn't thinking about anything else. At first. We laughed at how bad his slides looked. I teased him for using Comic Sans. He told me I was a lifesaver, and he meant it. I could tell. Then something shifted. It wasn't anything obvious. Just the way he looked at me. Like I was the most interesting thing in the room. Not the slides. Not the laptop. Me. It's been a long time since anyone looked at me like that. Like I mattered. Like I was seen. We reached for the same pen. And his hand brushed mine. Just skin. Just contact. But something inside me jolted. A flicker. A heat. A pulse I hadn't felt in years. Neither of us said anything. We both pulled our hands back like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. He cleared his throat, kept talking about the layout of his slides. But his voice was softer now. And I felt warm in my chest. Not embarrassed. Not even nervous. Just awake. I tried to stay focused. Tried to keep my eyes on the screen. But I could feel the tension in the air. It was quiet, but it was there. Like a string pulled too tight. Then he stopped mid-sentence. Looked at me. And he asked, "You okay?" So simple. But the way he said it. I wasn't okay. I hadn't been okay for a long time. But I smiled. Nodded. Said I was fine. Of course I did. He smiled back. And we went back to the slides. Kept pretending like we didn't feel what we just felt. But something had already shifted. Something had already started. And that was the first time I noticed I was hungry for something I couldn't name. After Theo left that day, I sat at the dining table for a long time. The laptop was still open. His notes were scattered. The rain had stopped, but everything still felt heavy. I stared at my hand, the one he brushed. It was nothing. A moment. An accident. But it wasn't. Not to me. I kept replaying it over and over in my head. The way he looked at me. The way my chest tightened when he asked if I was okay. The way I felt seen. It shouldn't have mattered. I'm married. I have a life. A family. But it did matter. More than I wanted to admit. I tried to brush it off. Told myself it was just human. I've been touch-starved for years. You can only go so long feeling invisible before the smallest kindness feels like a spotlight. A brush of the hand, A moment of real attention. It's not a crime. It's not like I did anything. Right? That's what I kept telling myself. But that night, when my husband called to say he'd be gone another 2 days, I didn't feel disappointed. I felt relief. And then I felt ashamed for feeling that way. Later, while folding laundry, I caught myself daydreaming. About a laugh. About eyes that actually held mine. Theo hadn't crossed a line. And neither had I. Not really. But suddenly, I started to wonder, what if he showed up again? What would I wear? Would I brush my hair differently? Put on a little mascara? Maybe change out of the oversized hoodie I've been living in for months? The thought startled me, because that's not who I am. But the next time he texted, just a simple, "Thanks again for helping out the other day. I owe you 1 inch," I smiled. And I read it twice. 3 times. That tiny buzz of attention? It lit something up in me I thought was long gone. Still, I fought it. Every feeling. I told myself it was loneliness. A tired mom clinging to scraps of validation because she hasn't been kissed like she's wanted in years. But I couldn't ignore what was happening. Not when I caught myself putting on jeans instead of leggings the next time I thought he might come by. Not when I chose the shirt that fits a little nicer. Not when I added a spritz of perfume I hadn't worn since before the kids. I wasn't doing anything wrong. That's what I told myself. But my reflection in the mirror looked back at me with different eyes. Eyes that knew. I started noticing things. When my husband got home, I'd listen to the way he said my name. Flat. Distracted. A tone that sounded more like, "Hey, what's for dinner?" than, "Hey, I missed you." And then I'd think of Theo. And how he says my name like it matters. Like I matter. That was the hardest part. Not the moment at the table. Not the text. Not even the quiet thrill I felt when I knew he'd be around. It was the guilt. This whisper in the back of my mind asking, "What are you doing? Who are you becoming?" And the louder whisper saying, "You're not becoming anything. You're just remembering." Remembering that you're still a woman. Still capable of feeling something. Still alive. But is that a betrayal? Is it betrayal if all I've done is think? If all I've done is want to be wanted? I didn't touch him. I didn't cross a line. But in my heart, I think I already had. And every time I tried to convince myself otherwise, I felt that ache grow a little more. It started small. A message here and there. A meme. A joke. Something random. Funny. Harmless. Theo would text things like, "Tell me this doesn't look like your youngest when he's hangry," or, "Saw this and thought of that horrible PowerPoint slide. I promise I'm never using Comic Sans again." And I'd laugh. Not just at the joke, but at the fact that someone thought of me. Someone remembered the little things. Someone made the effort. We didn't talk every day. But when we did, it was easy. Natural. It didn't feel wrong. At least not at first. And slowly, those messages started coming a little later. After the kids were asleep. After the house was quiet. After the part of the night where my loneliness usually crept in. He'd ask, "How was your day?" And I'd find myself typing long replies. Not filtered. Not edited. Just honest. We talked about everything. Old movies. Childhood stories. Dreams we used to have. The way life sometimes takes you in directions you never meant to go. One night, he told me he used to want to be a teacher. Said he gave it up because someone once told him there's no money in it. I told him I used to write poems. Said I stopped because I couldn't hear my own voice anymore. There was a pause. Then he said, "You still have it. I can tell." And I remember staring at that message, wishing I believed it as much as he did. Then came the night my husband was out of town again. A last-minute flight for some investor dinner. He texted me, "Won't be back until Friday. Don't wait up." It was Thursday. Theo texted me around 7:30. Said he had one of my books, one I lent him ages ago. Asked if I'd be home. Said he could drop it off real quick. I told him sure. I didn't think much of it, but I did change my shirt. And I did fix my hair. And I did light a candle in the living room like I always do when I want to feel human. He showed up with the book in one hand and a bottle of red wine in the other. Said, I figured I owed you a thank you for saving my presentation and enduring my memes. I laughed. He smiled. We ended up on the porch. The kids were asleep. The house was quiet. The night was cool, but not cold. We sat under the string lights I'd put up last spring. I always thought they made the porch feel warmer, more alive. We poured the wine. Talked like we always did. Laughed about the time my youngest tried to flush a banana down the toilet. He told me about a date he went on that ended with the girl crying in a parking lot because she saw her ex. It was light. It was easy. But somewhere in the middle of the second glass, the silence changed. It wasn't awkward. Just thick. Heavy. He looked at me. Not with a smile. Not like a friend. Just looked. And I felt it again. That flicker. That pulse in my throat. The warmth that curled in my stomach. We were quiet for a while. Just sitting there. The kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. The kind that means something. And then his hand touched mine. Not by accident this time. Not a brush. Not a slip. It was gentle. Still. Intentional. And I didn't move. My heart was pounding so loud I could feel it in my ears. I stared at our hands. Then at him. He leaned in just slightly. Not enough to kiss me. Just enough to ask the question without saying a word. I could have let it happen. God, I wanted to let it happen. But I didn't. I pulled my hand back. Stood up too fast. I should go, I said. Even though I was already home. He nodded. Didn't push. Didn't say anything. Just looked at me like he understood. Like he wanted to say something but knew it wasn't the moment. And I walked back inside. Closed the door. Pressed my back against it. And just stood there. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of what almost happened. But because of what I wanted to happen. It was exactly a week later. A quiet Thursday evening. The kind that feels too still, like something's about to shift, but you don't know what. The kids were in their room watching a movie. I was on the couch, scrolling through my phone without really seeing anything. And then Theo's name popped up on my screen. You home? I stared at the message for a moment. It wasn't like him to reach out without a reason. I replied, yeah, everything okay? A few seconds passed. Then, not really. Can I come by? I just need someone to talk to. There was a pause in me. Not hesitation. Just awareness. I could have said no. Maybe I should have said no. But I didn't. Yeah, come. I told myself it was innocent. He needed a friend. And I was just being kind. That's what I told myself. 20 minutes later, I heard the knock. Soft again. Always soft. When I opened the door, he was standing there, drenched. Rain falling heavy behind him, jacket clinging to his shoulders. Hair wet, eyes tired. He looked like someone carrying too much. Come in, I said quietly. He stepped inside. Dropped his bag gently on the floor. I handed him a towel. He didn't say much at first. Just sat down on the couch and let out this long, heavy sigh. I sat next to him. Close, but not touching. Not yet. Finally, he said, she ended it. Just like that. Said I wasn't present enough. Said I wasn't in it. I don't even know what I did. I didn't know what to say. So I just listened. Let the silence hold the space between us. He kept talking about how nothing ever seems to work out. About how tired he is of being the one who gives, but never feels like he's enough. And then, he looked at me. Really looked at me. His voice was low. Soft. I think about you, he said. A pause. More than I should. I froze. My heart loud in my chest again. That familiar pull. That ache that had been building for weeks. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to move. Our eyes locked. And in that silence, that deep, charged silence, everything in me said, don't. But then he leaned in. And I didn't stop him. We kissed. It was brief. Desperate. A collision of loneliness and longing. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't soft. It was everything we'd been pretending not to feel, crashing into a moment we couldn't take back. When we pulled away, I couldn't breathe. I stared at him. He stared at me. Neither of us spoke, because there was nothing to say. The weight of it was instant. Heavy. Sharp. That kiss, it wasn't a fantasy anymore. It wasn't a what if. It was real. And it shattered something in me. Something I didn't even know was still whole. After the kiss, the room went silent. Not the kind of silence you get after a conversation ends. This was a different silence. Thick. Cold. Unspoken. We pulled away, almost at the same time. His eyes dropped. Mine stayed frozen, somewhere between the floor and the truth. Neither of us moved for a long time. Then he said, quietly, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. I didn't mean to make this harder." I couldn't find words. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. He stood up slowly, grabbed his bag, didn't look at me again, just whispered, "Take care," and walked out the door. I didn't move. I sat there on the couch in the same spot for what felt like hours. The rain had stopped, but it was still dripping from the roof, like a slow echo of everything inside me. My fingers were trembling. My skin felt too tight. And my heart, it wasn't just racing. It was crashing. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat in the dark, stunned, because what just happened didn't feel like a thrill. It didn't feel exciting or daring. It felt broken, like I'd dropped something I can't ever put back together. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm, before the kids, before the sun. I stood in the bathroom, staring at myself. I looked the same, but I wasn't. Everything felt sharper, more fragile. I could hear the boys laughing in their room, and for a second, I hated myself. Because while they were giggling over cereal, I was drowning in something I couldn't explain. My husband got back that afternoon. He walked in like he always does, talking on the phone, one hand in his bag. He kissed the top of my head in that automatic way. Said, "Missed you," while checking his notifications. And I just stood there, hyper-aware of everything. His tone, his words. The way he didn't notice the way my eyes didn't meet his. He talked about the trip over dinner. I nodded at the right times. Smiled when I was supposed to, but I was somewhere else. Still on that couch. Still hearing Theo's voice in my head. The silence from Theo grew louder each day. No texts. No, "How are you?" No meme. Nothing. And that silence? It cut deeper than the kiss. I couldn't eat. Food tasted like cardboard. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed it. Not just the kiss. The look before. The look after. The space between what we did and what it meant. And then, something strange happened. My husband started to notice me again. He came home earlier. Made dinner reservations. Told me I looked beautiful in a dress I'd worn 3 times before. He asked me how I was feeling. He kissed me goodnight like he used to. And for the first time in a long time, he reached for my hand under the covers. But I couldn't meet him there. Not fully. Something inside me had shifted. Not because I wanted Theo, but because now, I knew what it felt like to want something again. To be wanted. To be seen. And once you feel that again, really feel it, you can't go back to pretending you're okay without it. My husband was trying, but I wasn't sure I could, because even if I forgave myself, even if I buried it deep enough to function, something had broken, and I didn't know if it could ever be made whole again. The guilt didn't come all at once. It crept in slowly. At first, it was just a dull ache in the background, something I could ignore if I stayed busy enough. Laundry, dishes, school drop-offs, grocery runs. It was easy to pretend life was moving forward. But the still moments, the quiet ones, those were brutal. That's when the questions would come. The ones that didn't have easy answers. Was I just a woman craving validation? Or did I betray everything I thought I stood for? It sounds dramatic when you say it out loud. But when you've built your identity around being loyal, being good, being the one who holds the family together no matter what, a single crack feels like collapse. And this? This felt like an earthquake. I kept thinking back months, maybe years, trying to pinpoint where it started. The truth is, I've been in an emotional drought for so long, I didn't even realize how thirsty I was. I stopped asking to be touched, stopped expecting to be heard, lowered the bar so quietly I didn't even notice I was shrinking. I told myself it was just marriage, just the phase we were in, just life. But it wasn't just life. It was the slow death of closeness. And I let it happen. Sometimes I wonder if my husband knew. Not about the kiss, but the distance. Did he feel it too? Did he notice when I stopped reaching for him? Did he choose to ignore it like I did? Or maybe we were both just drifting in different directions and pretending we were standing still. I think that's what hurts the most. Not the kiss. Not even the silence that followed. But the fact that it took someone else to remind me I still existed. And I wanted to feel wanted. God, I wanted it so badly. But at what cost? That question still circles in my head like smoke. I did something I haven't told anyone about. One night, after everyone was asleep, I wrote Theo a letter. Not to rekindle anything. Not to apologize. Just to say the things I couldn't say out loud. I wrote about how it felt to be seen again, to feel alive again, to have someone look at me like I wasn't just part of the furniture. I told him I didn't blame him, that I knew it wasn't fair, that I knew the line we crossed mattered, even if it was brief, even if it was quiet. But I also told him something else, that I'm not angry it happened, because it woke something in me, something I needed to remember. I never sent the letter. It's still in the back of my journal, folded and worn at the edges from being read too many times. Some days I want to throw it away. Other days I want to burn it. But mostly, I just want to understand what it meant. Did I ruin a friendship? Or did I just expose the truth that was always hidden underneath? That maybe it was never just friendship. Maybe we were both standing at the edge of something and didn't realize how close we were to falling until we did. Maybe you think I'm selfish. Maybe you're listening to all this and shaking your head, thinking, how could she let it get that far? Or maybe you understand. Maybe you felt that same quiet ache, the kind that builds when no one's looking, when your name becomes something only used for grocery lists and school forms. When your skin goes untouched for so long, it starts to forget what warmth feels like. I'm not proud of what happened. But I can't pretend it didn't. And I can't pretend it didn't mean something. It didn't ruin my life. But it shook it. And maybe that's what I needed. Tell me, what would you have done? Have you ever felt emotionally starved in your own relationship? Have you ever craved something so deeply that it scared you? Would you have opened the door like I did? I'm not here to defend myself. I'm just here, being honest. Because somewhere out there, I know someone else is carrying a secret that feels just as heavy. And maybe if we talk about it, if we stop pretending that connection only breaks when something physical happens, we can finally understand what emotional abandonment really does to a person. So please, tell me your thoughts in the comments. I'm listening. Really. And if this story touched something deep inside you, if it made you pause, reflect, or maybe even cry, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, where real stories reveal the hidden corners of the human heart. Because the stories we hide are often the ones that need to be told the most. Some betrayals aren't loud. They don't come with slammed doors or screaming matches. They happen in the stillness, in glances, in longings we try to swallow but never fully can. And those betrayals? They leave no visible scars, but they haunt you forever. They change the way you walk into a room. They change what you expect from love. They change you. So, if you're in a relationship right now, take care of it. Water it. See each other. Really see. Because all it takes is one moment, one missed heartbeat, and someone else might notice what you've forgotten to see.